Hello, welcome to Lewisham Libraries. My name's Andrew and I'm joined today by Jody Burton. Jody is the co-author of Black London, History, Art and Culture in over 120 places, which is essentially a tour guide of London but with the emphasis on black culture, black figures and black history. First of all, Jody, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Would you say that's a good summary of the book? Is that?
Yeah, a tour guide is kind of like a travel guide, yeah. And it explains about the history, as you said, and the art and the culture, just local and global.
Yeah. Why did you feel you needed to write this book with Avril?
Oh God, that's a long.
That's fine.
I think working in I've worked in libraries for about 20 years, Lewisham as well, as we were just saying, for a year. And I think you can always see, particularly when Black History Month comes, how we just go to African American history. Like if I asked you any African American, if I asked you about Black history, most people would say Malcolm X,
Martin Luther
King, women-wise, Rosa Parks maybe. But if I asked you about Black British history or just Black, I don't think people would even know any sort of local figures.
You're right. And it's
we struggled.
It's not something taught in schools enough.
It's not taught in schools enough. And I think it was that, working in libraries, particularly at that time, and having studied Caribbean history years ago, back in the 90s, I thought, well, how can there still not be enough history? Yeah.
And I read that Avril does walks and the tour guides, and you're more the historian. Is that the collaborative process?
Well, kind of a bit of both, really. We actually met in 2015. We met. There was a Black art exhibition at the Guildhall, No Colour Bar, and actually one of the contributors in there, or one of the people that features in there, they were called the Huntleys, and they were Black educationalists, and they were pro supplementary schools, and they've got a plaque and everything. So they feature in that book, and we met there, and then our paths sort of crossed. 2016, I think Avril started her tour business, and I'd started a Black arts group via Meetup.
Okay.
It's kind of like a social network that does different groups, just to go and see more Black art and to not be the only one sometimes going to a gallery. And I think we just brought different perspectives to, just thinking, and then I just sort of put to her one day, I've gone on one of her tours, and particularly the one, she does one at Westminster. And at Trafalgar Square, everyone knows Nelson's column. Gosh, I've been brought up in London. I've passed this a million times. And in one of the plaques looking out towards Whitehall, there's this black figure in there with Nelson on Trafalgar. And you kind of think, gosh, and he's got a name. He's got George Ryan, and you can look up his records in the archive. And I kind of thought, I'm a Londoner, and how can I not know? I thought I knew quite a bit about Black history, but I didn't really know that. And I just thought there really should be more about documentation. And I think it also was very good timing because David Olusoga, the fantastic historian, and that programme about Black British history had been out. There'd been more Black plaques, so they did the BBC plaques. You've got Nubian Jack plaques, a Black guy that's been doing his own business and promoting Black plaques for a long while. And I think he'd worked a bit with English heritage before. So there just seemed to be more things, but also just to try and get local things as well. I think that's how it came about, just sort of thinking we could combine our skills and experience and just create something. Yeah.
I mean, you've definitely created something. It's, you mentioned growing up. You were a Londoner? So
Definitely.
Whereabouts did you grow up?
Deptford, actually.
Oh, you are Deptford.
Yeah,
yes,
Deptford. I was actually born in East London, but we've always lived in London, in South East London. So I went to school in St Joseph's School under the bridge in Deptford.
Okay,
yeah. Deptford's got a lot of history, and then really Catford and Lewisham and Sydenham. Yeah, I've always been around here. Really, I'm just near Mountsville Park.
Oh, okay. I used to live sort of around there. Yeah, it is nice.
The parks here are wonderful. Yeah,
they are.
So yeah, and I think the good thing is Avril lives in the north. She lives up in Enfield, and a lot of her tours are north and south because she sort of covers Brixton and that as well. But living in the south, particularly the history of and working in Southwark and working in Lambeth, you just get to know some of the little things that people walk by. I think one of the catchphrases we use is I do the Instagrams for us, and we sort of said, look up, slow down, and discover the history around you. Because I think sometimes as Londoners, we're always, come on, we just
I admit I do like walking fast and just you want to get to where you're going to.
I think that's Londoners for you, and I think sometimes when you look up, you think, gosh, that's that and that's there. I think there's a lot under your feet that you just don't see.
That's right. And I suppose so. Her being north and you being south, you had a very good even
Yes.
mix of all the information between you.
Yeah, definitely. Because she, like you said, with her tours, that formed a lot of it. But also, it was to big up places, the art side of it. So, for example, like Stephen Lawrence in the Tate, that picture. It's quite a famous picture, and I just thought some people will know that it's at the Tate, but some people might not. Yinka Shonobari in the Tate. And then also some of the local ones. Oluda, I always pronounce his name wrong. Oluda Equiano.
Oh, yes.
Now, Deptford.
Yeah, Lewisham had a exhibition on it sort of pre-COVID, not that long back.
Yeah, I think I saw. Yeah. And that is a name that really should be more well known. Yeah. I discovered a couple of things about him afterwards. He's actually got a plaque that's been made by children. It's a ceramic plaque in Telegraph Hill Park. Yeah, and it's really beautiful. And something else at the Queen's House. There was a sculpture at the Queen's House, and I did try to get in contact with the artist beforehand, but it was a bit too late to put in the book. But it's a beautiful sculpture in the Queen's House. But he's in there because Orlando Equiano, he wrote his biography about slavery. He was an abolitionist. Around 1700, he was campaigning against slavery. And you kind of think, that he really should. He's probably one of my key ones, and particularly being in Deptford, that he was brought over here and then he was kidnapped and resold here in Deptford, because you've got the docks. This is where Hawkins practically started the slave trade. So quite key. Okay. Yeah.
How did you find the process of doing this? How did you go about it? Did you start with maybe the things that you knew and then research more, or was it did you kind of just go on a walk and see?
Oh, well, because our two backgrounds, and then I just suggested it to Avril, and we came up with kind of a basic list of ones that we knew already, and then local ones. So, for example, like Harold Moody, he did the League of Coloured People, 1930s, and he's got a plaque more in Southwark. So, and then also he lived around Queen's Road, Peckham. So it was trying to get local ones. He's got a bust in Peckham Library. And then outside of Peckham Library, you've got a plaque to Walter Rodney. He was like an activist. And I think things like that people will just miss. So we came up with a list of some key ones that we thought people would know. The Mary Seacoast, for example. That was a fantastic statue that just went up just pre that. So there were a few to start off with. I think initially we kind of thought, oh, if we got about 50, then maybe. And then we kind of just tackled it. The format was just going to be simple. We're not historians like David Olusoga. And so it wasn't in depth. There are some great books coming out about history now. And actually David Olusoga, I just love David. I just love him. Yeah. He's done the adult book. It is a wedge of a book. It's very academic. But then he has done some children's ones now, and there's going to be another one out. He's done one for children, which is a paperback version, and he's going to do one that's an illustrated one for children as well. So I think it's trying to make it more accessible. I think our key things were the format was going to be simple. It was going to just be a picture, who, what, when, how. It wasn't going into too much depth. Explaining it had to have some physical. It had to be a plaque. It had to be a monument. It had to be a mural. It had to be a place. So it was also to big up places like the Black Cultural Archive, a gallery that I only discovered during when I was just doing my Black Arts group, Autograph in East London. And it was founded really for Black artists, Black photographers. So places like that as well. The African Centre that's in Southwark again. Places like that.
I mean, you said you're going for simple, and it's effectively simple because it is, like you say, like a travel guide, and you don't see many books on Black history this accessible, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what
you've hit the format very well. There's the timeline to start with, and then you break up London into your sections and whatnot. So it is very easy, and there's almost a picture on every page.
Yeah, we tried to do a picture for everyone. They didn't use all of the pictures because I suppose sometimes you've got a lot of plaques. My only thing would be, it would be nice if there were some key pictures I would have just loved in there. But I think you'd asked like the format. when we did it, we just chose our kind of favourite ones, or ones that were closest to us, or ones that we knew about. Or else, if we didn't know about them, then we just researched them. But it wasn't to go into too much depth. And the timeline was important because I think it puts things in perspective. Yeah, starting particularly with Black history, they didn't start in 1948 when they all came over. There's a linked history going back like forever. Yeah. And if you think about 1700, there were lots of Black people here. That they sort of say there were about 10 to 15,000 Black people. So this is the time of Orlando Equiano. You've got other abolitionists at that time. He actually formed like the 12 African. It was an African society of 12 men, and you just sort of think. That sort of things you just don't hear.
You don't know.
School. No, you don't. I'm coming up to my 60th year, so it's kind of like when I was at school, all we just did was slavery. Yeah, and we did. I remember Roots coming out around that time, and you just sort of think, and then it's Wilberforce, and then you just think there must be a bit more to it than that. I think that's probably why I went back to as a mature student. Back in North London Poly at the time, and then it changed to the University of North London, and it was the only university in London that was doing Caribbean studies. And so it was just fascinating, really. But even then, we didn't touch on a lot of the Black history. We did about cinema, we did about art, we did about Cuba. It was really good, but even then, there wasn't that knowledge, I don't think. I think people are still uncovering things.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm coming up to my 40th year, and it sounds like I studied less Black history than you did. Because from what I remember, slavery was touched upon so very little. And like you say, you touched on the Cuban. Everyone talks about Cuba and the sort of back when the Cuban Missile Crisis, but you don't really go much further than that. And again, if it was Black history, it was the American,
the Martin Luther King,
the Martin Luther King side. But I honestly don't remember learning much about sort of the slavery on the British side, which is quite worrying. Going to a school in Catford, I'd say,
it's worrying, isn't it? Yeah, my manager around the same age as you, and I think he just said the same thing. And really, when you think about it, I think it's because in America, I think it's very easy to look at someone else's history and also just to avoid your own history. And so, and also it depends who's telling that history. History is his story basically, and if you're only getting a history from just one perspective, it's the people that have won history. It's not the people that have lost, you know, or been the victims of history. Then you're hearing just one side, and you're just hearing one side.
I suppose then also it's a lot easier to judge someone else's country and their history rather than look back upon your own.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
Definitely. And also, I think probably with America, I suppose in the Caribbean, it was out of sight and out of mind. And so then it's very easy to just leave it there and say there's no connection. Whereas it's 3 continents. You had Europe, you had Africa, and you've got the Americas. And we're all interlinked, and that history, you're not hearing the whole history. And so I think that whole Black Lives Matter, for every generation you've had their struggles. But I think we just need to hear more. We want a more inclusive history. I think that really came out of that that you can see some of the inequalities and you can see the legacy of it, but I think people are wondering still why is this racism there? Because there's some structural racism there that has been from time immemorial, and unless you answer some of those questions, then it just doesn't. I think you just go round in circles.
I mean, you touch upon sort of the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, it's also you've got a date for it in here, so it's taken prominence at the end of this timeline. Would you say that's not necessarily helped, but did that spur along your traction? Yeah,
it certainly did. I think it sort of raised a lot of awareness. And again, we're going back to that American influence, aren't we?
Yes,
But we're very interconnected. I suppose if you think of the slave trade, then Britain was fundamental to that slave trade, and America was a colony. And so it kind of goes that we're interlinked. But it definitely that whole year of time, and also just time. We all had time to reflect, didn't we? Really, and just
I suppose not people weren't able to sort of just go about their days as they used to. When these things happened, you were kind of at home and you kind of had to sort of look at it, and you'd see it on the news every day and you think, oh wow, this is, couldn't ignore it as easily. I
think it did raise the profile, and which is not a bad thing. tragic that it had to be that way, but at the same time, I suppose you hope some good, or that it just doesn't. There's not a death for no reason, and that something comes out of it.
Good can come from it. Yeah. You mentioned obviously you would go through and you'd pick. Oh, we want this. We want this. Were there any you had to leave out?
I think when we came to the end, ones came up as we were going along, and we'd put in places, and then it just kind of just built up, and then other plaques were being put up as we were doing it. Well, some have been put up just after as well, and you're thinking, oh Lord. There were some that were left out if they didn't have enough history to them, if we couldn't get enough background to them. But most went in. Yeah, most went in.
What are your? Oh, that's a stupid question. What are your favourites? If there were 3 places you could pick, if you said to someone, make sure you visit these places, what 3 would you pick?
Yeah, that question always comes.
Yeah,
it's like choosing your favourite child.
Yeah,
but I'm going to keep it local. Because the other one, like George Ryan and those ones that have been mentioned, I think particularly in Lewisham, I think people should go to see there's a plaque at New Cross Fire Station, and it's to George Roberts, and he was a fireman. He was born in Trinidad, 1890. God, 1890, and he served in the First World War, and in the Second World War he was a fireman. Yeah, and he actually joined Harold Moody's League of Coloured People, so he was really proactive, fighting racism at that time. When you think 1930s, so he lived around, so he lived locally. He's actually got another plaque that goes over into Southwark, because he lived in that near Southwark. But it's a lovely plaque, because it's just a red plaque. It was by the London Fire Brigade. He died in 1970. Oh, wow. Yeah, so he had a really long life. Yeah, and you just sort of think that. I think he's had a little bit more recognition now. There's been a bit about him in the local papers. Well, I think he's probably a key one in terms of history. I think in terms of, culture, or the Battle of Lewisham. I've mentioned this one a lot of times, but I just sort of think it's such an important key event for Lewisham. 1977, the National Front are trying to march through, and there's a whole counter-protest, peace march against it. My mum goes on to that march. I'm a young teenager at the time. We're told, don't you go.
Yeah, my mum's similar age to you. She said she was at home and told, don't go anywhere near there.
I think because it was going to just be volatile.
And it was.
Yeah, it was volatile. But my 2 older sisters went, and I think my mum's really pleased that they did go. I think they ended up on some video somewhere.
Oh, wow.
But it was really, it was the first time the riot shields were used at that time. And they did stop them, and that was the first time one of the National Front marches got stopped. Yeah, because I can remember being in Lewisham at that time, and you'd be on Lewisham High Street where, and the National Front would be there handing out their posters, and their leaflets and things. And my mum, one day we were shopping there, and my mum just went up to get a leaflet because she just wanted to know what they were writing. I just thought, it's kind of like. Sometimes it is those grassroots things. So it's not all about people, it's about events and that as well. And I think what they've done with that mural, I was going to say mural. It's just so lovely and colourful. And they really did involve the community in that. And I went along to one of the art workshops for that. So it's just really, I just think it's really a good piece of artwork, really, as well. And you've got information plaques on the front of it. It's just by goldsmiths.
Yeah. Because they had we had a joint project with them called What's the Story a few years ago on the anniversary. Yeah. 2017. Yeah.
Yeah, and also Lewisham put a plaque on the opposite side of the road going down. There's a plaque there as well. So I just think that.
And again, it's nice to have something that looks good come from something so tragic as such.
Yeah, exactly, and something that people can just identify with. It's not just a plaque, because I suppose you want plaques. That whole thing about what do you do with the whole thing about statues and everything at the moment. But yeah, sometimes you want different mediums that express different things, really. But yeah, I think those 2 are really important. And like I said to you, that I think that Lorda Equiana, not one that's in the book, but Telegraph Hill Park. If you just go and you have a look at it, it's just so colourful and it's just really beautiful. And they made a little African garden around it. Yeah. It's just, and again they've got an information plaque. And I just thought, gosh, if we do book 2, that one will have to go in there.
When you finished the book and you were thinking, how do we publish this? Did you have a publisher in mind, or And what was it like? Were people snapping to get it, or was it a struggle as such?
It was a struggle, you know. It's not, I said, we started in 2018, and it was we just called it the book project. So you just build on it. We went to see some of the places, living north and south. So I went over to Alexandra Palace to see, there's these lovely murals there of black women in entertainment. And we came over to Crystal Palace Park to see the Sphinxes there. So we saw, between us, we've seen most of them. There's still a few that haven't quite seen, but you just verified that they're there. But it does take a long time. And in terms of publishing, we did have one in mind, but there was there's another book that's going to be, that was meant to be out, that's been slowed down. So you have to, it's a bit like applying for a job. You have to read the information. There's the artist and writer's handbook, which is kind of handy. But now we've got the internet. You know, you just do your homework. What kind of non-fiction book that covers this? We applied for about 7. Avril had a contact for 1. There was one where a couple where this wasn't the kind of book they were looking for. But most of them sort of did say yes. But there were just 2. In terms of financially, you don't really get a lot of financially. We're not David Walliam, so it's kind of like they don't throw money at you. You by the end of 3 years, you're just happy to get it out there. Really, we had 2 yeses, and then one had said they would go for it this year, and one had said 2 years time because they'd already decided it. And we thought 2 years time we may kill each other.
Because you're not allowed 2 out at once or something. It's very strange. Yeah.
No, that's just the way the publishing works, because they've already decided on their books that they're going to publish. They're already going way ahead. But they're very structured and rigid, and it's very structured and rigid, and that whole thing about it is like an application. You're doing submissions, you're filling in the details. You know, I think a couple of the first ones, they didn't even want the picture, so you're kind of just sending them, a PDF or a Word thingy, and then it's quite practical. You know, how many pages, how many words, how many, and then you've got to really look. You do have to really do your homework. You've got to see, are there other books like that? Are they the right? And then you just get the ones that had said yes. We kind of thought, yep. It was a fast process once they said yes. Because she sort of said they could get it out for this year. It got accepted in December. We had to go over and edit. We'd done a lot of editing by then. We'd kind of practically finished, but it was still editing. And then you're editing. They're doing the formatting. The pictures going back and forth. The timeline's going back and forth. And you're, it was like 5, we got it in. It was like March. It was like 3 more months of editing.
Was that March 2019 that you finished?
2021.
Oh, 21. Wow. 21, okay.
Yeah. It got accepted in December 20. Yeah, and 21 we were doing the final things for it to come out for June. Yeah, because then they had to get it to the print, and then it was actually meant to be out in July, and so it was really good that they got it out for June 22nd. So it was really rush day. So it's a great hook for us, really.
So I guess obviously you were working us back and forth during lockdown, was it?
Yeah.
So it gave you some time to.
Yes, yeah. I work in the library. I work part-time, so that gives me the headspace to get on with that. Yeah. So I just sort of thought, I can do that. Yeah. And then the COVID. Yep. It wasn't. Yeah. It was useful to be able to just carry on just working on that. Yeah.
So you use your time very productively then.
I did.
So it was a good lockdown for you in a way.
It was a good lockdown for me because it wasn't very, very different. It just meant more time. Yeah, it was very productive.
Oh, that's good. On a more personal level, did you read anything during your time? Anything?
I did. I tried to switch off. I tend to read a lot of magazines and newspapers, but book-wise, yes, I read. Oh gosh. Sometimes you just want something light-hearted. The Book of Echoes, Rosanna Amanka, and it's kind of set in. It's a fiction, but it's got some history in it as well. So it starts at the time of slavery, and then it goes over the generations. It comes up to Brixton and everything. But it was just a beautifully written book. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
obviously Avril does the walks. Are you a keen walker yourself?
I am a keen walker. Yeah, I love walking. And then I think in Lewisham we're really lucky because we've just got some great parks, and then we're right next door to Greenwich. So
so not too far to get some greenery.
Yeah, and also I'm a runner. Yeah, that would be a surprise. So, but I'm a very slow runner.
That's right. Yeah, exercise is exercise.
Exercise is exercise. And I occasionally do those park runs if I can get up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday. But I have done a marathon in 2015. Yeah, it did take me 6 hours. It was like the Brighton. It's really hard to get into the London Marathon. So yeah, I just thought I just want to do it, and I was in my 50s, and I kind of thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. Yeah, it just felt like an achievement. And actually, sometimes the when you're trying to, I think in your life you just want some challenges and some goals. And after I did that, I think some of the processes you use for that you're going further, and then you're building. Then you run a bit more, and then you run a bit more. It's a bit like that for a book, or when you do a degree, you just sort of think, okay, I'm nearly there. Okay, I've done this, and then you can see how much you've done, then you can do a bit more. And sometimes it's those same sort of processes.
I was going to ask, was this like a goal for you then? Was this something that you always?
Yeah, definitely. I think working in a library, you can't not be inspired. You see all these books around, but also you realise how difficult it is for those books to get out there. You can have a book published and people say, oh, what about the next one? But sometimes it's like this. It's like promoting it. This feels like work. It's nice work, but it's kind of like you have to keep that traction going.
It still fits a purpose to promote this.
It really does, because I think you get a lot of dead books in libraries, don't you? After a while, they've had their thingy, and then it kind of...
Well, you would know. Yeah, we get a lot of books in, and you think, I've never heard of this before. And you never hear anything of it. You might hear something on the radio about something else, but the majority of the books come in... There's no promotion whatsoever.
I know. It's really quite hard, isn't it? Quite a lot come out. And I suppose this is good because it's a bit different. It's not. And hopefully it will appeal to all readers, really. And it kind of has appealed to all readers. We were particularly hoping for children. That was one of the things about putting the timeline and putting like the local and the global, because I think part of the whole thing for Black History Month, just Black History generally, is that you can see the periods, really. Yeah.
Obviously, you work in a library. Have you had this book come into stock in your library just yet?
Yeah, of course.
What kind of moment was that?
It was lovely. I posted it on the Instagram. The books have come in. And also, when they come into the libraries, I don't know about your one, but it comes with a little plastic jacket around here.
Oh. Yeah, sometimes, so maybe it happens sometimes with our books. If not, we sort of cover them ourselves.
Yeah. And it was just really nice. So it's gone out. I made sure it went to all the Southwark libraries. And it's gone out already. So
we're still waiting on our copies, but this is one that was purchased for me. So it'd be very good to have that, and then we can say, one of the authors has been here to talk to us about it, which would be very good. You feature a lot of art in this. Is art a passion of yours? And is it not just black art, but is art in general something that you're interested in?
Yes. I love art, and I think also because the whole guide is, I suppose the history of Black history, a lot of it is about commemorating, and it's quite challenging, and a lot of it's really quite sad. And so I think it's nice to inject the art as well. And for me, I think I've just loved drawing from when I was really young. So just art is really important. I love black artists. I've done that black arts group for sort of 3 years, 2016 to 2019. And it was just nice to expose yourself to different galleries and places that I probably wouldn't have gone into by myself, especially some of the posh galleries in London where they're sort of private galleries. Thinking, but sometimes they really have nice exhibitions, and they really are really very friendly. And also there's a lot of art that's around it, just at the Tate, like the public galleries. So you've got a great art exhibitions that are permanent, particularly at Tate Modern and Tate Britain. You've got a whole just history of London. So you've got Ronald Moody. I think one of the Harold Moody, his brother, he was an artist, and he did the bust of Harold Moody that's in Southwark, Peckham Library. But also there's a copy of that at the National Gallery, and in Tate Modern you've got Tate Britain actually. You've got this fantastic sculpture. It's called Johanna, and it's just a figure of a man in wood. But it's just beautiful, and it's part of their permanent collection. And you've got a lot of artists that are in there, and particularly like the Stephen Lawrence, the Doreen Lawrence, No Woman, No Cry, Chris O'Feely. That's just one of those beautiful paintings that you can just look at again and again, and there's so many layers to it. You know that in her tears, you've got portraits of his face in each one of the tears that she cries. Yeah, it's just really, and I think it's very multi-layered. And then I think also the one for me that I probably just love the most is the Yinka Shonobari that's at Tate Britain. And this is, it's called the British Library. Fantastic for a librarian and a bibliophile. Of course. And it's over 6,000 books, and they're done it in Yinka Shonobari style. So you've got that African, they call it African print fabric, African wax print fabric. And I always have to remember, I remember this acronym for this, AID. So it's like, it's Indonesian inspired fabric, but it was manufactured by the Dutch and then sold to Africans. So you've got this whole different level there. And then you've got about 3,000 of these books. They've got gold embossed names of second and third generation immigrants that had come to Britain and made contributions. But also Yinka Shonobari being Yinka Shonobari, you've also got people that had contested immigration. So you've got, what's his name, Enoch Powell. You've got him on there as well. But the majority are really positive. So you've got Idris Elba. You've got a lot of the people that we've referenced in the book, like C.L.R. James. You've got artists, Sonia Boyce. It's a beautiful piece of work. And it's one of the pieces that it's permanently there, but it started off in Brighton, and it really is big. So it's like going into a room where you've just got all these books. And he's also created an online catalogue, so you can look up the names and the references to each of them.
Oh, that's useful.
Yeah. And so I saw this piece. I actually went down to Margate to see this at the Turner Gallery, just to see it there. And it was just lovely because you're by the sea.
It's a stunning gallery, yeah. My mum lives down by there, so
it's lovely. And it was just at the front, so the lights coming in, and I just thought, oh wow, it just blew me away. And then I saw it again. I went to the Venice Pavilion, the Venice Biennale.
Wow.
God, that was 2017. And I just wanted to see it there, and it was the first time they did an African diaspora exhibition. So it was the first year that just a range of black British artists, and so he was featured, and also the young artist, the photographer that had died, Khalida, I've forgotten her surname. She died at the Grenville fire, and she was a photographer, and her work was there. It was just stunning to see it there, and this time it was kind of really old-fashioned. It was kind of like in wooden, old wooden library shelving. And then I saw, and then saw it at the Tate, and I actually couldn't find it at the Tate, so I'm looking all around, and so I asked one of the assistants, and then she took me through the little warrens of the little to get there for a different way. So I suppose each time it's kind of like it feels very personal to me. Yeah.
Do you have a favourite artist or a favourite style of art that you tend to?
Not really. I don't have a favourite. I don't have a favourite artist. I do love Vincent van Gogh as well, and he's got they've just done up a house where he stayed in Lambeth, and it's going to be sort of open. You can go online and that as well. But I love his art, and they've kind of created a walk along near the house, and you've actually got one of the little street libraries and things. So I'd recommend that to go and see. But I actually like drawing. I like there's an artist called Barbara Walker, and she does pencil drawings, and I've always liked pencil drawings myself. I kind of apart from reading, I really want to get back to doing a little bit of drawing. So yeah, that's that kind of style I like. There's not one style I like. It's kind of like a mixture.
Oh, brilliant, yeah. Okay, so you mentioned you grew up in Deptford and sort of the Lewisham area. Do you have any memories? Could be fond memories, or maybe not so fond memories of your time growing up around here?
Oh, growing up around here. Well, I think one of my earliest memories, and especially a library memory, is going to Deptford Library.
Yeah, the old Deptford
Library. The old Deptford Library it would have been at that time, because we were brought up around Tanner's Hill.
Okay,
And I can always remember just those book cases, for the young children that they've divided in four, and just the little tickets in the books, and oh God, it was a time of tickets. Going back, but no, it's a lovely memory. I think the libraries are always a lovely environment to be in, and I just think for me they've always just been important. So
and they've changed over the years, but the purpose still serves the same function as such.
Yeah, I think definitely they are third spaces now. They're not just. I think people think, oh, it's going to be a quiet library. And as we know, it's not always a quiet library. People come into them for a range of reasons, particularly now. They want to come in to use IT, for Wi-Fi, to access information. You know, I suppose a lot of our key readers are trying to get in the baby and the toddlers and the mothers. That's where you're going to get your stats. You know, libraries are like businesses in their own right, really. We might not be making money, but we're trying to get those stats. They're all important stats to get people in and to use it, and they are part of the community. They really are important spaces because what other place can you go into that you don't have to pay to go into, and that you can sit and stay in there, and take things out, you know,
and access to all sorts of information.
And to not everyone has a computer at home, which we discovered during the COVID period.
Yes. Because so many councils just like lending out computers because they just don't have. Not everyone has the access. And
safe spaces for people as well. Because I worked at Lewisham Library for a year. I'd worked at the Downham Library, and it really is. You know, they are good spaces. You know, you've got the cafe there. You've got the I suppose the way they're building them now, so they've got other facilities joined onto them. I think people are still going to need them in the future. And I think we just need to hang on to them, the ones that we've got.
Yes, very true. What do you have planned next? Have you? Everyone always asks these questions and think, what do you have? Have you got another book in mind, which not everyone wants to talk about? But is there anything else you would like to do? It doesn't have to be a book. You know, what would you like to do next?
Gosh, that is a hard one, because I suppose, you know, this has only come out in June, and we're only just August. Gosh, can you believe it's August? I suppose now it's the promoting for this book. It's hard not to think ahead. The feedback has been really good, and a lot of people keep saying, "Well, what about the next book?" And possibly, I think we'll have to see. Like I said to you, I'd like to be a bit more creative myself in terms of drawing and arts, which I really want to get a bit more into. But for now, I think we'll
focus on this.
I think we'll focus on this and the promotion for this.
Is there anything, any passions you'd ever want to go into? So of something other than a book. I mean, art. Would you like to have your work in a gallery, for example? Would that ever be something you'd aspire to?
Not really. No, I'm not sure in a gallery, but maybe in a book. Maybe something where it's combining art and history and black history and art sort of together. Maybe possibly something like that. Like we'll kind of see. But it's
might not have the time for it now that we're out of lockdown. So
I know. I suppose it is all of those things. I think once you've achieved one challenge, then it's kind of like, oh, what do you do?
Next,
there is that. What do you do? Sort of next. But I think also you kind of just have to pace yourself and just enjoy this one. I'm really just enjoying this bit of the next stage, really.
Well, that's a great way to look at it, rather than thinking, oh, it was so stressful, to actually sort of now look back at it and say, I'm enjoying this being out. That's And yes, Black London History, Art and Culture in over 120 places is available to purchase online and in other bookstores. Jody, thank you for talking to us today.
It's been lovely.
And I wish you all the best, and I hope to see you soon.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
Bye.